Okay, so you've flagged the 79th group for us, and wow, this situation, it's a mess, right? Like a tangled web, seriously.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to get to the bottom of it here, really untangle it for you. We're diving deep into this payment suspension and this whole fraud investigation that's going on. We got some reporting here from Insolvency Law to help guide us.
Okay.
So let's cut through the noise, and try to make sense of what this all means, especially if you're following this story or maybe even affected by it directly.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those situations where, just the headlines themselves are kind of hinting at like a much bigger problem,
Right.
And so getting the timeline clear, understanding how all these things are connected, that's going to be really crucial here.
All right. So let's jump right into it then. I mean, the big news, the thing that's grabbing everyone's attention is that the 79th group, they've stopped all interest and redemption payments on their loan notes.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal for anyone involved, right?
Absolutely. And the timing of it all is super significant here. This announcement comes right after the City of London police went public with their investigation into suspected, and it sounds like pretty widespread fraud within the company. And Insolvency Law, they're pointing out that these two things happening so close together, it's a pretty strong sign that the 79th group, they're in some seriously hot water, financially and legally.
Yeah. And Insolvency Law, they weren't exactly shocked by this news. They had been reporting on growing concerns, and this outcome was no surprise to them. It makes you wonder, what were they seeing that maybe others weren't?
What's interesting is that Insolvency Law, this isn't something new for them. Their investigation into the 79th group, it actually started way back in 2022.
Wow.
They were getting early warnings, like signals from investors who were worried. So they were already on top of this well before this recent news broke.
Yeah, it really suggests that maybe there were problems brewing under the surface for a while now. Something that really stood out to me in all of this is this whole legal pushback. Apparently, the 79th group's solicitors, they were pretty aggressive, trying to stop Insolvency Law from publishing their reporting.
Yeah, no, that's a really important part of the story. We're talking about Ben Mather, Catherine Mills, and Graham Smalls from JMW Solicitors. And it seems like they were really trying hard to shut down Insolvency Law's investigation starting last year, 2023. They were even sending out these letters before action, which are basically legal threats, demanding that online publications be taken down.
Which then brings us to this really direct and important question, right? That the source material poses. Did these legal efforts help shield the 79th group from scrutiny, allowing it to continue unchecked and ultimately cause greater harm to investors? That's a pretty big question to consider, right?
It is, and it makes you think about what kind of impacts these legal tactics have. If there were real concerns being raised, were these actions just a way to silence those voices? To avoid anyone taking a closer look? It definitely paints a picture of a company that's working really hard to control the story being told about them. Which, looking back now, with everything that's come out, kind of raises some red flags.
All right, so let's get into the specifics of this payment suspension. We've got interest payments that have been stopped completely. For investors who were depending on that money, that regular income, that's got to be a huge blow.
Oh, absolutely. And remember these loan notes. They were marketed as these secure, high-yield opportunities backed by real estate. This idea that the interest payments have stopped. It just totally undermines the whole promise that was made to these investors. People who thought they were putting their money into something safe and stable expected a steady return. It makes you wonder, what kind of due diligence did these investors do, and what kind of information were they given in the first place?
And it's not even just the interest payments, right? It's the redemption payments, too. Those are frozen. That's even more alarming because we're talking about people's initial investment, the money they put in that they can't get back, even if their investment term is over.
Exactly. So this freeze on redemption payments, it means investors can't get their money back, even if they're supposed to be able to. And this really strongly suggests that the 79th group, they're having some major cash flow issues, what they call liquidity problems. Basically, they probably just don't have the money on hand to pay out what they owe. And that's a huge red flag, potentially pointing towards insolvency.
So what's the official word from the 79th group? What reasons are they giving for suddenly stopping all these payments?
Well, they're saying it's because of significant financial risks. But when you look at the bigger picture, right, like the fact that there's this fraud investigation going on and all those early concerns that Insolvency Law were raising, it seems pretty likely that these so-called financial risks, they're connected to the alleged fraud and maybe even a total collapse of the company's finances.
Right. And the fraud investigation itself, it's all about whether the 79th Group was making misleading claims when they were selling these investment products, especially those loan notes, right? What exactly are they looking into there?
The main thing they're looking at is this. Did the 79th Group mislead investors when they were promoting these investments? Was there a difference between what they promised, these high fixed returns backed by property, and the reality of the situation, which is now, legal scrutiny and potential financial ruin?
Yeah, and it's a pretty worrying situation for the people who invested their money. What's the likely outcome for them now that they're facing all this uncertainty?
Yeah, it's not looking good. I mean, with both interest and redemption payments frozen, it's a real possibility, and scary one, that investors might never see their money again. And this whole situation really highlights some problems with how these types of investment products were structured and sold. I mean, these are pretty worrying flaws, and they could have a ripple effect on the whole investment landscape.
So it sounds like there are a lot of people out there who are going to be searching for answers and trying to figure out how to recover their losses. And it seems like Insolvency Law, they're stepping in to try to help with that.
Yeah, they are. They recognize that these investors, they're in a really tough spot. So they're offering to help them explore different legal options and ways to potentially recover their money. There's a specific email address they've provided, investigations@insolvencyonlaw.co.uk, for investors to reach out to them, talk about their situation, and see what can be done. In a situation as complicated as this, having that kind of direct support can be really valuable.
That's great information for anyone listening who might be affected by this.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they're not just helping investors in the 79th Group, but also anyone who's owed money by a company that's just refusing to pay up.
Exactly. So they have experience helping anyone who believes they have a legitimate debt that's not being paid. If that's you, you can reach out to them at that same email address, investigations@insolvencyonlaw.co.uk, to see if they can help.
So to sum it all up, we've taken a really close look at what's going on with the 79th Group. They've stopped all payments, and there's this huge fraud investigation hanging over them. It raises some serious questions about whether those investments were ever really safe and whether investors are going to lose a lot of money. And the information we've got from Insolvency and Law, that's given us some really important insights into how we got to this point.
Yeah, and what really stands out here is that investors, they've got to be so careful. Do your research, do your due diligence before you put your money into anything, especially something that's promising you the world. The fact that there were concerns being raised all the way back in 2022, that shows you how important it is to be skeptical, to ask questions, and do your own digging. It might save you a lot of heartache down the line.
For sure. And thinking about those attempts to silence those early warnings, those legal actions that were taken, it leaves us with this one final thought for you to consider. How do we strike a balance between a company's right to protect its reputation and the need for transparency, for accurate information to be out there, especially when people's money and their financial well-being are at stake? It's a question that goes way beyond this one case.
Absolutely.
It's something for all of us to think about.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.